Welcome to today's episode, people. Today we are going to be talking about data and how it will help your game. So let's dive into this. Now, before we get started, I really want to just give a shout out to Oberg for taking the Genesis Invitational this weekend at 12 under. Tight little race there. We got 12 under, 11 under, 9, 9, 8, 8, 8, 8. I mean, this was a tight race. But what's going to be interesting about really bringing this up today is diving into a little bit of data that we can look here kind of quickly. So we'll have a little fun with this. So just want to point out, it's going to play into our data talk here today. But if I pull up some stats from Oberg and we look at, let's just say, strokes gained. A lot of people have learned about what this term is and what it means. We'll try to dive into it a little bit more here today for those that don't understand it. Now, I'd like to do a full episode on, every shot counts, but we'll discuss that later. But anyway, so if we look at his off the tee, strokes gained, 2.855, ranked 4th out of the field. We go to his approach to green, 5.432, 4th ranking. Around the green, 1.713. He's 15th ranked in the field. Putting, 18th ranked at 2.310. And his strokes gained total, 12.311, ranked number 1. Now, if you look at that number and his total score under par, he's 12 under. So interesting stuff to really look at here, and then really just helping people understand, the strokes gained in golf and how that formula really works, is that the formula is basically the average strokes from starting location minus average strokes from ending location minus 1, equaling strokes gained. Take the average number of strokes needed in the finish, needed to finish a hole from your starting position, subtracting the average number of strokes needed from the end position, and then subtract 1 to account for the shot you just played. So that's pretty much just more of the formula versus kind of just explaining it aloud. But anyway, positive values are going to take you to, you're basically doing better than the field. Negative, not good enough. You're below the field average, things along those lines. But it's very, very interesting, and we could go through a whole episode explaining strokes gained. But I figured just a quick little tidbit of that, plus just really giving a big applaud to Oberg. I think this is a rising star on the PGA, as well as a number of guys out there. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on to today's episode. Okay, so first, starting out with today's episode, data and how it can help your game. The thing that everyone has to understand is that data is everywhere. Basically what you do for a living, whatever you are. I mean, if you are a city bus driver, your government is running data analysis on routes and timing of bus schedules, the amount of volume that you're going to be taking in. So data is everywhere. It doesn't matter the job that you have or where you stand on the planet Earth. Data is around us. And it's only going to get more and more and more, especially with AI really becoming a very big topic in all outlets, from artistic side to business analytics to you can even think just golf in general, which we're going to be discussing a little bit here today. But AI is going to be everywhere. So get on board with that because it's not going anywhere. So anyway, what is data? So let's just go through some factual things about understanding what data is. So it's information, it's facts or numbers that can be used to learn about something. It can be represented through text, numbers, and or multimedia. So data types that we want to really look at is quantitative and qualitative. Now, what are we after in golf is more quantitative, okay? So the whole thing about, when we try to look at this is that we want to look at numbers. We want to be able to analyze and basically allow ourselves to really figure out and weigh out the outcome. So examples of quantitative would be like age, height, weight, income, number of customers, temperature, data collected methods, right? We want these type of numbers for us in golf versus the other side of it is just, good, bad, happy, sad, qualitative. So we want quantitative data for us to then be able to analyze our game. Now, data processing. So we have data that we've been collecting. We understand what kind of data we need. We want to organize this data, process it, analyze it, and transform it into raw data points allowing us to create insights that help us make decisions on improvement, right? So decision making, we want to take data, bring it in, analyze it, work through it, and then help us determine what we need to do moving forward. Now, quality of data is really, you can't stress that enough. So you can collect a whole bunch of data, but you can also shift data to support, say a conclusion you really want to have, right? To support a hypothesis that you have. In reality, what we really need to do is really make sure that we're getting quality data to help us determine where we need to really improve in our golf games. Okay. So processed data used in decision making must be accurate and complete. We don't need just partial data. We need lots of data, and it needs to be very accurate. Now, with that being said, take a little segue from just data, and just talk about the common golfer and really their lack of understanding their own data about their game. So a common golfer would come to see me, right? So I'm a golf coach, and I've taught thousands of students. I can't even count how many lessons I've given over the years. But the common thing we see when a golfer comes in and he says, hey, Derek, I'm really struggling with my game. So I will return and say, what really happens when you ask a golfer what is truly wrong with their game? They're more than likely going to answer with inconsistent, right? They're going to say, I'm inconsistent. I'm not very good. I need to score lower because X, Y, and Z is coming up. Let's say a guy's weekend, a girl's weekend, it's a business event, or it's just anything involving something coming up for them. They always want to try and tune their game. But again, you go into what do you think's the problem? I'm inconsistent. At this point, I already know that they have really no idea what is wrong with their game. So what we have to get into is we got to kind of peel back the onion, as it were, and start unpacking and asking the right questions to help this student really, divulge the information that I need to help them improve. Now, let's just take a step back and imagine that this golfer has already collected data. He has all the information about his game, and then he presents it to me. So he's not saying he's just inconsistent. He's saying where his problem areas are. So he's just laying out the data. So we go back to it and we say the quality of the data. Let's just say that this student in general that has brought me data has brought a very accurate and complete data pool of information that I would need as a coach to help him get better. So with that being said, students typically, again, are going to come in and they are not going to have a basic understanding of where their real problems are. So they're going to really base it more on what they've observed and felt. Now, I'm not saying that that's not good data, but it's not really accurate data because they're just going to go off their most recent round, and they probably can't ultimately be able to recite the last 10 rounds with pinpoint accuracy and to be very complete. Again, we want accurate and complete data. So they're also going to go off feeling. They're probably going to go off of what their friends said, or let's say a fellow playing partner that might have been with them. Okay, but overall, they still have really no idea what's driving their scores up and down from one round to the next. And this is a challenge for anyone trying to get better. If you literally have no idea what is really affecting your improvement or your score, you're at a standstill. And even the best coaches on the planet Earth are already a little bit behind the eight ball when it comes to bringing in a new student that has no data. Now, traditionally, this is how it's always been. But today, we have so much access to data collection, apps and software, whatever we want to call them. And we'll run through a few of those here shortly. But the whole piece of this is that if I'm a coach and I can get all that data from that player that he's already been collecting or she's already been collecting or they've already been collecting, that's helping me really pinpoint exactly the direction we need to take with this student before I even start analyzing what their swings are about, right? So what's going on with their fundamentals within their swing mechanics. And so, kind of moving on here. So we have a whole story. We have a golfer who comes in, no data, and all they say is I'm inconsistent. That's a struggle. Then we have another golfer who comes in with all the data, accurate and complete data, and that's a huge help and a step forward in improving those players. So we take the golfer who hasn't brought in any data and he's just saying I'm inconsistent, right? No real general idea of what's going on. Well, a general idea, but really no super, quantitative data to support his inconsistencies. Okay. So that means that we have to send that golfer back out to collect that data. So you as a golfer, think about that. You just went to a coach and they can go through and fix your grip, change it from slice to draw. But ultimately, that's just not going to help you score better. And that's what everyone wants. You don't have to have a perfect golf shot. You don't have to hit it the furthest in your group. You don't have to be the best, but you do want to score better. So, it's a disservice for anyone to take a student in with no real data and just look at the swing and then just try to quantify what's going on. I'm taking the tangible swing data that I'm seeing within the environment, which then brings me to another point. Students will always say to me, I don't hit it that far. I don't hit it that way. I don't do that on the golf course. I mean, that's an eye opener for a coach in general or an instructor, a teacher of golf. Like there is a problem here. There's a disconnect. And this is where students and coaches of any sport or even in business, wherever it might be, is that, there's a disconnect. So I have to, as a coach, try to assume where the inconsistencies really are based on what I see swing mechanic wise. But then I'm told by the student that that's not what they see on the golf course. So they're using their observation and feel, which may or may not be accurate, but still it is leading me to then have to, I guess, really question what is going on with the student's game and how can I help them? But again, I would be better served as a coach as well as it would be better served for the student looking for help to have data. So ultimately, if you want to improve your game, you need to start collecting data. So if we move on to how to start collecting data, well, there's a plethora of apps out there, and there's probably a new one coming out, every day almost. I mean, it's like iPhones, right? Every 2 seconds, there's a new update for an iPhone, or there's something else going on with the new phone. There's a, iPhone 7 million and Android 60,000, whatever it is. Okay, technology is always progressing. So if we look at the apps and we look at tracking performance through the apps, and we can use strokes gain and, launch Mars and all that stuff. But ultimately, on course, it's going to matter the most starting out and trying to improve your game and collecting data. So you have some apps out there that you can get that come with sensors. So we're looking at Arccos, ShotScope, Golf Logic, and many more. And there's lots of them out there. Everyone's trying to get in on this. So with this, we're attaching these sensors to the club and we're using the app and we're collecting data and we're putting in everything, but we have to go back, okay, and understand that there's a pitfall to data collection that we might present to ourselves. So even though you have all the tools to collect the data and you're staying, well, let's back up real quick. So we have all the tools to collect the data. But the thing is that it comes down to the user. Okay, so making sure that your phone is charged all the way up, making sure your sensor is correctly, paired with the app. Make sure your phone's got enough, making sure that you got the collection or the sensors to every single club. And then also just making sure the stuff that the sensors are collecting for you, also then your user input data that you need to put in, right? So data quality must be accurate and complete to allow for the best decision making for the areas of your game that need help or do not. We don't want to go working on things we have no idea about. At the same time, we don't want to go working on things that we don't need to work on. So again, the pitfall is data collection from the user's end. We have to make sure that we're staying consistent from round to round, from hole to hole, from shot to shot, collecting data. Now, it can seem like a very tall task, and it might be overwhelming at first. So if you're not ready to jump into the apps and the sensors and making sure your phone is charged and the sensors are good and they're paired and everyone's all happy, okay? Just go back to old school scorecards tracking, right? Write the stats on a scorecard. Use the basics. Fairways hit, green in regulation, putts per round. Where are you missing? Are you missing right? Are you missing left? Are you missing short? Are you missing long? I mean, that's at least some data that you can present to a coach down the road when you really start seeing the bigger picture of where your struggle areas might be. Okay? Now, with that being said, let's actually jump into this. I'll actually skip forward on how I wanted to really walk through this. So I'm going to jump to something that maybe a lot of you do not know about, which is the Rico's Law. So a lot of you might just immediately go like, what the hell is Rico's Law? So a lot of us, or pretty much most golfers, understand green regulation, right? So Rico's Law is named by Lucius Rico, a PhD, right? And there, you can look him up. So basically, he was the first to present at the first World Scientific Congress of Golf in 1990, and identify greens and regulation, GIRs as we know it, right, as the most powerful predictor of score. In reality, more like average score, right? So that's a fun fact, right? Rico's Law. According to Rico's Law, you can figure out the average score with this basic formula. So you can take your scorecard tracking data, right? So we jump back. We're kind of old school. We can't do all the apps and all the fancy stuff. We think of like, let's say Gen Z and baby boomers or something like that, or just, they want to stick to more of the traditional way of doing things versus when we get into millennials and Gen Z that are like, just everything is apps. Everything is apps. Everything's social media. So, I mean, pick your poison, but you need to collect data regardless of the way you collect that data. Now, I would encourage the apps for any generation of golfer, but if we have to do the scorecard, we can have fun with understanding Rico's Law. Rico's Rule. So the way this works, kind of like a strokes gain stuff, okay, is taking the average green and regulations number that you have. So let's just say an example of this would be you played 18 holes and you got 5 greens in regulation. Well, what you're going to do now is you're going to take that and multiply that by 2. Okay, so we do 5 times 2, we're looking at 10. Now we're going to take that number, okay, and we're going to minus that to 95. All right, so we take 95, we minus the 10, we see a score average of 85. Now, to prepare for this episode, I actually took that Rico's Law and put it against Allberg's scoring average for the year, okay, which was, it was kind of freaky because I've actually never tried to do this when it comes to, doing the tour and really testing the data on this Rico's rules thing. But it was fun. So I took his average rounds or his average green regulations. Okay. I put it into this formula. Okay. And I went into the PGA Tour average, and you can do this too. And it's pretty accurate. You can do it against yourself, which I really encourage. But I go and I look at, and I think the number I was able to get was 71 was his scoring average for the season thus far. I was doing the season, not just the round or the tournament he just played at the Genesis at Torrey Pines. Okay. So I go down and I try to find him here, and I see him. He's 69th for scoring average right now at 71.271. That's crazy that a 1990s formula is still working today, even with shots, or strokes gained out there, right? Which is also its own kind of awesome, data collecting and all that jazz. So any Hoosiers. So we'll move on from this. So try it out. Again, the formula is take your greens in regulation, multiply that by 2, and then take that number and subtract it from 95 and see what it is. But the accuracy of this is just kind of a, let's just say a side note to all this, or how we need to really say it right now, is that the more rounds you get, the more accurate it becomes. So if you do it for just 1 or 2 rounds, it's not going to be as accurate. But once you get to 4 to 5 and onward, just like you're dealing with handicap systems out there, the more rounds you have, the more data there is. The more data, the better, the more accurate and more complete your results can be. So with that being said, so we go ahead and we move on, and we start to kind of back up to changes in how we see golf data. So we have companies out there now like Golf Data. And many of you may not even know about this. So check out golfdata.com. It is a plethora of just data. I mean, if you are a data analyst person, or you're big data, or you're just someone who just loves statistics and averages and analytics and blah, 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 go to datagolf.com. It is one of the coolest sites when it comes to data. The PGA Tour website, pgatour.com, you can go onto their analytics as well. When you're looking at strokes gained, you go to their stats page, and you can start playing around with that. But the biggest thing is have fun with those. But data is all around us. So tour players are using this, and Every Shot Counts by Mark Brody, suggested read in audiobook. So I would really grab that. That was released back in 2014. Essentially, this book was kind of like shaking up. It kind of shook up the way stats were kept in golf and how we really, were able to perceive change. Like, how could we get better? And this data that Mark was doing was, I think he worked with the MIT guys to really try to refine it. And it was brilliant. And now you can see it's overtaking any kind of data that you see from Golf Data and or the PGA Tour stat, or any other places that you can get data from involving tour players and how they're comparing to the field, or how to get better. And tour players are wide awake to this now, so they can start pinpointing where they're struggling. And that's huge when trying to take an advantage of the field and to win, to get these tournaments on your belt, especially the majors, right? Now, with that being said, traditionally, the way we track stats had very little relevance towards actual improvement of your game. So some of the examples you would have within this would be, like distance is huge. You can gain more by adding some distance you can lower your score by adding more distance off the tee, or adding more distance in general to all your shots. Distance is king, as it was said, right? Especially when it comes to golf, right? But then the other aspect is, like, you can look at like a Dustin Johnson, who might be pounding it down there, but he's not accompanying that with greens and regulation, which goes a little bit back to, kind of Rico's law. Okay, sorry, Rico's rule. But anyway, so we go through that, and we go and we look at how this can really help your game. So with Every Shot Counts, it's really helping you pinpoint what you really need to look at for helping yourself lower the scores, right? So instead of just sitting out there, traditionally just banging balls on the range, asking for it to draw, or asking for it to fade, or sitting in the bunker all day, or putting all day, or chipping all day, or hitting a certain iron all day. Now you can really start practicing with practicing with true purpose, right? There's all kinds of funny sayings. If you don't know what you're going to need to practice, you're not going to get any better in the aspect of scoring lower. Now, it doesn't mean that fundamentals of swing mechanics don't need to be learned, or the basics of chipping and pitching and bunker play and how to hit a drive and how to line up. I'm not saying any of that is not relevant. Fundamentals of a natural golf swing, or the laws of the swing, are very important. if not the most important. But when we're specifically looking at trying to understand how to score, this is where we have to be. Okay? So, if we're trying to improve our game, we need data collection. Okay? If we're trying to improve our game, yes, we need to go see a coach. We need to see a professional and work with them on basic swing mechanics. But ultimately, if you want that coach to just teach you how to swing a club, you don't need any data. They're just going to analyze your swing and tell you how to do it. But the problem with that method, model, okay, is that that player will be very good at swinging and hitting a golf ball relatively straight with predictability and repeatability and pretty much a lot of consistency, but then they don't know how to actually score. And that's the name of the game, is being able to score. So with all that, let's walk through some benefits here. Now, some of it we've already said, but let's say we're just going to come to a conclusion to this, okay? So data collecting benefits for golfers, you, the golfer listening today, and even me, or anyone else that comes on this show, okay? Unbiased feedback. Get objective feedback on your strengths and weaknesses. That's a problem that all of us face as humans, is that we let our egos get in the way and we don't allow ourselves to really open up and learn, especially the older we get. We're more accomplished. We've been through so much. We've dusted our shoulders and our pants off many times. I can figure this out on my own. No, you can't. Nobody can. We all need help. Even me. And when I go to work with my game, even with all the experience I have of understanding swings and how to play this game, I go and get someone to look at my swing, right? Because I need that unbiased feedback. So this data is unbiased. It's what you're producing on the course. So you need to use this data. And that's going to help tailor your game for training, right? So now you have a very focused training regimen that you can then customize your practice, focusing your practice time on what you need to improve to score better, developing predictable models, because now you're using something to help you get better through unbiased data, tailored training, customized practice, and now predictable models. Now, with all that, it's going to allow us to set realistic goals. And that's one thing a lot of golfers come in, they let's say they're shooting 90, shooting 80s, they're like, I want to shoot in the 70s, I want to do this. Now, there are those out there who, they're very modest, but in the back of their mind, they want to shoot in the 70s. Everyone wants to break 80. But unfortunately, we have to understand that it is time that it takes to get there. But we're wasting time if we don't have the data. Okay? So you can sit there and just try and try and try. But if you have no data, you are not going to score lower. You're going to have your fluke rounds. You're going to deal with laws of averages and all those things out there. But if you have no clear, decisive data, right? So if we go back and we look at it, is accurate and complete data. If you do not have that, you're not going to be able to improve. Now, once we have realistic goals and we have predictable models and we are customizing and tailoring our practice and training, and we have unbiased data, we're going to keep collecting that data while we're improving, so we can actually then have that tangible information to then compare where I was to where I am. And is it working? And do I need to refine it? Do I need to get more down into the nitty gritty of this? So besides that, improve strategies. Okay, now we can think about it as two ways. We can think about it as course strategy, but we can also think about it as the development strategy. So let's just say you collected all your data and you haven't decided to go to the coach and you're just focusing on what the data is presenting you and you're working on putting. But you're now collecting that data, you're noticing you're not getting any better, or you're not improving at the rate you want to improve at. So this is where, regardless of what you do, always go and seek professional help. Get the opinion of someone who is trained to improve your game and or your swing, okay? Now, there's a lot of specialists out there. There's a lot of methods and philosophies out there, and we'll make a full episode on talking about that, but today is about data. So in the end, making better decisions is what data is affording you. That's a benefit. You're making better decisions, right? So this is where it's like, we look at it as you can improve your game or really, let's say you can accurately pinpoint, improve your strategies to make better decisions, to set more realistic goals, to have predictable models, to develop those models through unbiased data that tailors your training and customize your practice. Just from data, right? Just from data, and your coach having that data or you having it on your own is still helpful. Preferably get someone to help you kind of break that data down and, kind of move you through the training process. But with that all said, we have to go back to where the golfer that came in looking for help, no data golfer, to a golfer with lots of data. Coming in and saying you're inconsistent, again, that's just telling us 100% that this golfer literally has no idea outside of some observed or feels or some feedback from some friends or fellow golfers on their game. They have no idea. So you got to get a basic understanding of what is going on with your game before you can ever make a decision to move forward. It's no different than bringing your car in and getting service, right? There's basic stuff, basic maintenance, things that you have to go through to keep that car running or to improve on it, to help the car perform better. So we need that as well. So the biggest thing is start collecting your data. Grab one of the apps. Do the old school scorecards. Go grab a book and read about how every shot counts from Mark Brody. Think about and test yourself with the Rico's law or Rico's rule. Okay, so have fun with this. Get some data. Start tracking yourself, and also look to get some help from a professional. Number one recommendation as a golf coach, and who is still an active golf coach, teaching every day of the week, go get some help, right? Now, with that being said, we look forward to our next episode. But again, today, I'm Derek White. This episode was all about data and how it can improve your game. I hope this helped for you, and we'll see you in the next episode.